Nurturing Your Creativity by Entertaining Possibility. This is an interesting mix for me because this is, for me, the thing that I most need to learn. And oftentimes we end up pursuing to learn and teaching the thing that we most need to learn for ourselves. And so that's why this has been really near and dear to me to pursue knowledge in this area. I've been reading a lot about goal setting and thinking through things and what does it really mean to entertain possibilities. So I've been actively pursuing this on a daily basis for a while now, and it's definitely not something that you can really ever cease doing, especially when you're pursuing your art. So this is, for me, this class is really important because this is more about keeping that well-oiled machine of dreaming and moving forward going. So I'm excited to share with you what it is I have learned thus far. So first we'll start out and we'll talk about what is possibility. Sometimes I think what I have run into is I have allowed my negative thoughts to creep in under this disguise of just being a realistic person. That has gotten in the way of my possibility. Sometimes we allow our realism, our groundedness, and our logic to slay our dreams. So I would like to reopen the discussion of what is possible. What does that mean? Does anybody have any personal experience on that they'd like to share thus far? I'll go ahead and talk about the word.
What is the definition of realism? Is each person have their own thought process on what that word means to them, or influence of peers, or how is that defined?
That's a great question. I think that realism is probably very much influenced by your paradigm, what you see around you, maybe what you've grown up with, the expectations that potentially your community, your family, your school, we oftentimes try to meet those expectations without realizing that we're conforming to expectations that aren't expectations we have for ourselves. So yeah, I think realism probably is going to be different from culture to culture, from person to person, varying on your personal situation. And thus is possibility going to be just as diverse. What I will think of as possible for me, or what things I might be entertaining, is going to be different than somebody else. So we'll just go ahead and try and define the word possible. That which can be, that which can be done, that which could happen, and that which can exist. And possibility, the prospect or the likelihood or the future potential that something could happen. For our purposes this evening, I will say that possibility is the belief that things in the realm of thoughts, dreams, ideas, pondering can come into reality. And this is particularly important when talking about your creativity or your personal art. To entertain possibility, there are a couple things that we have to do, and the very first is dream. And I know that sounds funny to put that on your list of to-dos, but to set aside time for daydreaming, consciously, wakefully dreaming and being with yourself, going for a walk, and letting your mind wander. This is actually the first step to entertaining possibility for your art and for your life. The second thing you have to do is you have to pay attention to those dreams. You have to listen to yourself during this time. You have to write it down in a journal or make a list. And actually in one of our webinars before, I've asked everyone to make a list. And the list I asked everyone to make, it wasn't in the last one, but it was in the one prior. I asked everyone to write down 3 to 5 things that were sort of your wildest imaginings. What things you dreamed for yourself, what things you thought maybe weren't possible, but that you wish were possible for yourself. And I said, don't restrain yourself. Write these things down and pay attention to them, what those things mean to you and where those things can lead you. You may not even know yet, but to entertain possibility, you have to entertain those wild imaginings. So for someone, it might be, I would like to be a fashion designer in New York City. For someone else, it might be, I have this idea of being a dancer, or I have an idea of being a painter or learning to speak Italian. Anything that you think that you would like to be. Or a travel writer. I talked to someone recently who really wanted to be a travel writer, and I was like, that is not outside the realm of your possibility. And she really seemed to think that it was. And I was like, well, you already travel and you already write. Why can you not put them together? So here we go. This is something I learned recently from a friend of mine, aka the yoga teacher at the YMCA. Where is your gaze? Where are your eyes fixed? Are they lifted or are they cast down? We will accomplish what we will. Which of these 2 choices of attitudes we choose serves us in where we want to be? And that is kind of for me been a really deep realization, to recognize that the times in my life where I had some of the most negative attitudes, that was where I needed to be at the time that I was to learn those lessons and to go through those things. And when I was done with that, I started finding new ways to get out of there, to get out of that way of thinking. So an example would be people who always seem to have opportunity anywhere they go, no matter what. They seem to have this charmed life, versus people who seem to not be able to make it anywhere. I saw this 2020 a while ago about a girl who was homeless, attending high school, and she applied to and got into Harvard. She slept in a stairwell in a parking garage, and this girl would bring her books home from school, and this was her home. And she did her homework in the stairwell of the parking garage, and she was able to make it into Harvard. And that to me is like pretty amazing, because I'm thinking to myself, how is it possible that she believed it was possible that she would go from being homeless to Harvard? But she did, and she worked hard to make it happen, and her life changed because of it. Versus I read a story about a screenwriter who really wanted to make it, and he was rather frustrated. He was actually kind of writing in to an editor, and he just listed off why it was impossible, why it was totally impossible, not possible to make it as a screenwriter anymore, that every city he's lived in has had flaws, and that it was hopeless. And so those are 2 sort of perspectives on accomplishment based upon what you believed was in the realm of possibility, regardless of where you are. A homeless girl living in a stairwell applying to Harvard, or a screenwriter in whatever city, big city, small city, whatever. A lot of it was the belief of what was possible. And because of what they believed was possible, their choices and their actions followed what they believed was possible. So again, I'll share with you some life lessons from yoga and running that apply to art. And these are my personal experiences that I share with you. In this picture, you'll see me on the right with my good friend Amanda on the left. Amanda, a few years ago, had not run before, and she just recently finished her very first half marathon. and that's 13.1 miles. And the story of Amanda is Amanda had to go to a place where she believed it was possible for her. And then as a result of her belief that this was possible for her, she followed it up with actions every day, week in and week out, for over a year until we got to this day where she completed her first half marathon. So some life lessons there. And I mentioned my yoga teacher from the YMCA. She talks about the first ingredient for doing anything new is trust. So why not art? Why not our creativity? Why do we not necessarily take these things into it? I believe entertaining possibility involves tenacious trust, as in keeping your gaze lifted, keeping yourself hopeful while you do the work. So as soon as you bring your dreams into the realm of possibility, the steps become more clear. Then they become goals, and the only place that you're able to actually start is where you are. And that's the only place you can start. You can't start ahead of yourself. You can't start behind yourself. You can't start in someone else's shoes. You can only start exactly where you are. And one of my favorite authors who I reference a lot, Dan Miller, talks about dreams become goals when they put on work clothes. So we've got dreams, we've got them coming into the realm of possibility, and suddenly things are starting to happen. We're starting to set some parameters around that. So whether the dreams or possibilities you're entertaining are professional or not, maybe you do want your art to be a profession, maybe you don't, they're always personal. They're always personal, and they look different for everyone. Just like everything in life, possibilities, the steps that we take to get to our dreams, they look different. We can't compare ourselves to others, because that is one of the worst things you can do when you're entertaining your possibilities. You're trying to flesh out your dreams. You really can't compare yourself to someone else, because someone else might be doing something different. Their career might be different. Their choices might be different. Their hobbies might be different. Their resources might be different. And you can only learn from others and tap into the available resources and then do the work yourself. So what might this look like? You may need to entertain the possibility that you could learn to draw. If that's where you're starting, I want to learn to draw, but I can't. Here's how you can invest your time and tap into resources. This could mean I'm going to go to the art store for a sketchbook and pencils. And then after I buy them, I'm going to procrastinate for a few weeks and keep thinking about how I wish I could learn to draw. So then you think to yourself, no, it's okay. I've got these pencils. I've got a sketchbook. I haven't done it, but I've been saying I want to do it. Now I'm going to commit. I'm going to recommit. And I'm going to carry around my sketchbook in my bag. I'm going to draw something out and about. And then you start to do that a little bit, and you're kind of excited at first. And then you become a little frustrated because your drawings are not coming out the way that you believe they should. Then you're going to go again, and you're going to say, no, I really want to do this. I'm considering, I'm renewing my sense of possibility, and I'm looking for a helpful resource. What are those resources? So then you start researching what those resources are going to be for you. So maybe then you end up signing up for a travel kind of weekend retreat sort of thing where you take your sketchbook with you and you learn from someone who's been doing this for a while. That's an incredibly helpful resource regardless of what you want to do. Then you come home and you're invigorated and you're drawing everything near you. So something I'd like to point out is that this is not a straightforward linear path. Entertaining your possibility and nurturing your creativity this way is a continued commitment to dream and then help fill in the steps to bring it into reality. Some considerations if you want to be a professional. There are tons of resources to help you along the way, but you've got to start where you are. Again, that is the only place you can start for. So if you have a dream of performing at Carnegie Hall, but you've never ever taken a lesson in whatever instrument you want, the first step for you is going to be to, okay, I've got this dream. I'm entertaining my possibilities. I'm not going to shut it down and say, oh, that's so far away, I can't reach for it. But I'm going to be realistic and say, obviously, I can't just walk into Carnegie Hall. That's ridiculous. Everybody knows it. I'm going to take a lesson. So start taking your lessons and orient your goals from there. So if you've already been taking lessons for years, maybe you need to talk with your teacher, your tutor, whoever you're taking lessons with, and say, I have some dreams and some ideas. Can you give me some feedback about what I can do with them? I like to call this the due diligence, or putting in your 10,000 hours. I read somewhere that it takes approximately an estimate of 10,000 hours to be an expert in any field. So if you want to be a professional, you want to be an expert, you're definitely going to have to put in some time. If you just want to nurture yourself personally, give something to your community, you're not worried about making a living off of this, or being big and famous, that's totally fine too. You can still completely benefit from all of these thoughts. I like to call this the now, the near, and the far. And this is how I think through things to bring them into reality. So I have this dream, and I've paid attention to it. I've written it down. I've really nurtured this dream, these possibilities, and I've got my gaze lifted. My eyes are looking up. I'm thinking, yeah, I trust. This is possible. That's the proper entertaining your possibilities posture. So the now is, what can I do today? What could I do today to make this come a little bit closer to me? Maybe the easiest thing you can do today is do some research and see how much music lessons cost in your area. Maybe that is what you can do today. The near, what can I accomplish over the next 3 to 6 months? And that might be committing to, by the end of 6 months, I'm going to sign up for that first lesson. And the far, what are the long-term dreams? What can I accomplish 6 months to a year from now, or 5 years from now? Maybe your far-off dream is, one day I'm going to take my fiddle and I'm going to go down to Bluegrass Jam and I'm going to jam with those players for some time in the future. Maybe I only know one song, but maybe that is my big lofty dream, and that's enough for me. So ironically, to make these things happen, you have to start thinking backwards to think forwards. If you know what you want in the far, like the far off thing, that tells me what I've got to start accomplishing in the near, the midway, the 3 to 6 months, which then helps me define what I should be doing for the now. So those times when we're sitting here and we're dreaming and then we're getting frustrated, like, well, there's nothing I can do about this now. The truth is that maybe there's a little something that I can start right now. So that's encouraging. Once you start doing these things and you're dreaming, the last time we talked about resistance and roadblocks, those perceived and real things that get in our way, like procrastination, excuses, frustrations, and perceived failures. And the best advice I can give to anyone, the best advice I can give to myself, is to set aside time for your practice. Anticipate the hiccups. Stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to happen, and keep your gaze lifted. And it can be entertaining. Entertaining possibility can be entertaining. It can be fun to dream. It can be silly. It can be wild, and that's what keeps it exciting. Sometimes I have these crazy ideas, and I write them down, and then a few months later I start to see these might be valid. Like, I might make some art that looks kind of like this. And art can actually be fun and enjoyable. It doesn't have to be this thing that I'm like stressed out about. I can entertain these wild, crazy, lofty dreams, and I can maybe do them badly at first. So I read a story about a woman recently who had a lifelong dream of playing the cello. And so she rented a cello, she got some lessons, and she was playing really poorly, and she was completely happy. She was the happiest she'd ever been in her entire life. She was totally filled with joy that she had finally stepped out and engaged in the process. So maybe do that and then entertain the possibility that one day won't be so bad. This brings up some serious issues oftentimes when you're working with yourself in this way, because this requires so much delving into yourself in places that might be challenging. And it can sometimes bring up these feelings of negativity and low self-esteem. Those feelings will confront you even if you are one of the most happy, self-assured, upbeat person. Some of the most accomplished of artistic and creative people have these struggles. Getting out there, putting yourself out there will confront you with those feelings from time to time. Sometimes they'll plague you, and if it's chronic negativity and chronic low self-esteem, that can often be what keeps us from our goals, our dreams, and from entertaining any kind of possibility that anything in our lives could be different, that our art could be successful or good or rewarding to us personally. If this is your case, there's plenty of resources available for you. I have gone through periods of my life where I have struggled deeply with these things. And looking back on it, it's been some of the most rich and rewarding time of my life in hindsight, not in the middle of it because it was really challenging. But I'll tell you some words for the journey if that is your case. And if it's not, just a reminder, you are valuable. You are creative. You have something to offer yourself and others by entertaining your own possibilities and then acting on them. And this reminds me, one time I was in a creativity class in college, and we had this final project, and it was to come up with a creative product, which in my opinion, product is not necessarily the process of creativity. Product is another thing. It can be a result of creative thought, and oftentimes is, but is not always the case. Anyways, a lot of people in my class were feeling really, really discouraged that their product wasn't very creative and that they didn't have creative abilities. So I decided that my product would be to create a slideshow entitled "You Are the Creative Person." And I went around my college campus and I took pictures of all the people in my class, in my creativity class, doing the various things that made them uniquely them. So like for scientist people, I took their pictures in the lab. For sporty people, I went out and I took their pictures while they were playing sports in the field, etc. And I put this slideshow together, and I put it to some really moving music, and I showed it to my class, and I said, "You are the creative person," throughout the presentation, spelled out in different ways in nature, sticks, leaves, written on chalkboards, all sorts of things. And that was my creative product was to try to encourage my class and let them know that they were in fact creative, regardless of the fact that they had or had not the ability to create a specific product. That probably should have been my first hint that this would be something I would really be invested in teaching in my lifetime, but I didn't know that then because that was 8 years ago. So nurture your sense of possibility even in the midst of a perceived fail, roadblocks, and resistance. These are a part of the path to making your possibilities a reality. And here I've drawn a finely oiled machine. This is what I like to call the finely oiled machine because it's not really a one-way linear thing. It's a constant moving and working together of these things that we've been talking about. Nurturing your creativity by entertaining your possibility can equal positive momentum. Spend time dreaming actively, entertaining possibility. And that is something I try to do daily. even though maybe it looks like I'm staring out the window. Pay attention to your dreams and write them down. Keep a journal, keep a sketchbook, keep some paper near you, and take the steps to flesh those things out with your gaze lifted, meaning a positive outlook, and trust the process of that. In the midst of that, put your work clothes on your dreams. Think backwards from your desires to flesh them out in the in-between steps, and release and do what only you can today. So if you think about the far, and you think about the far-off dream, like, for me as a painter, it would be an amazing far-off dream to, be collected in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Something like that would be a wild, audacious possibility for me. So if I think about that, that seems a little overwhelming. I start to break it down. And I think, well, if I keep painting, then I get into some shows maybe in the next few months, whatever. What does that mean for me today? That means today that I need to nurture my self-creativity and make honest work. And that the things will start to fill in the midway, that one day, maybe when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, I'll get there and I'll get to be. And for painters, it usually does take that long, but maybe for other things, not so long. So the dreamer. You see things and say why, but I dream things that never were, and I say why not. George Bernard Shaw. And the doer. Creation is a better means of self-expression than possession. It is through creating, not possessing, that life is revealed. It's a great quote that a friend sent to me recently, and I felt like it really fit. And the one who nurtures their creativity, the artist, is both a dreamer and a doer. So as you can see, dreaming and entertaining possibility is essential. So I want to say thank you all, and this will be the part where we are open for discussion. The next Art Nurture class will be coming up May 1st, and it's going to be a class that I open the registration for tomorrow. It's going to be called 28 Days to Creating Your Creativity Habits. And the registration will be open for about 2 weeks, and then I'll close it because it's going to be a group that has weekly classes with each other, and is it's not going to be open and free so that anybody can join. It's going to be something where people get a little more deep and have conversation with each other, and I really want it to be a safe place for people to explore that. And so I'm only going to open registration, but the class will last for an entire month, so I wanted to share that with you. You all are the very first to hear about it. And if anyone has any thoughts about the discussion this evening on entertaining possibility, the floor is completely open. This is kind of a mix, I feel like, for me, from my perspective. It's really been a mix and a synthesizing of learning positive thinking techniques as well as goal setting techniques. And I have to say that it's really changed my practice for me, and has opened up a lot of new opportunities for me in my individual work, as well as out in the world. So it helps me kind of when I'm alone and in the process of community and putting myself out there. And, I don't know. Does anyone else have anything to share, either Grace or Molly?
Well, for me, this came at a really appropriate time, this conversation, because I actually had a similar conversation earlier this week. I was talking to a friend of mine who is going forward with a small business plan, and he was telling me all of these goal-setting techniques that he had used to sort of like lay out his 5-year plan, his 1-year plan, his 6-month plan. I mean, basically what you're talking about with the now, the near, and the far. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It was interesting because I was asking him about the methods that he used for his business, because they really apply to sort of like anything that you want to set your sights on. And I had realized that, I've been, over the past couple of years, I've been facing some frustrations because as I realized, I didn't have a long-term goal. I had sort of like general ideas, and I had like dreams about things that I wanted to do in the future, and then I had things that I wanted to do now, but I didn't really have much of a middle ground. And so I do think that in order to sort of like lessen your frustration and help, and even when you do get frustrated because it's inevitable, it helps to have something concrete in the future to keep your eye on, like a reference point. So it's like, okay, I may be frustrated now, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing now to get to this other point. And if it's not so amorphous, if it's not just a dream, then it's much easier to sort of like talk yourself through it, through the harder times.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is really great, talking about the midway frustration that you might experience. If you've got the now and the far, but maybe not the near, is really hard, and frustration will come up. And what you do is you are like a ship in the storm, and you're searching for an anchor. And a lot of creative people or people pursuing creative things or art, that's kind of, I think, where the loss happens. Where people, they kind of lose it. They fall on the wayside. They're not going to continue on, or they're going to take a 20-year break. I've heard of a lot of creative people doing that, and I think that part of it is that frustration in the midpoint and not having an anchor. And I completely agree. And it's funny to think about having a business plan type thing for a creative endeavor that seems a little more nebulous. It's like, well, I'm creative, I'm a painter, and sometimes I do this, and sometimes I do that, and I draw.
It seems totally counterintuitive to impose that kind of structure on this life that you're trying to sort of like deconstruct for the purpose of finding something new with your expression, with your creativity. But I think that for me at least, it helps to have that overall structure so you feel more comfortable taking chances and exploring possibility, but not necessarily feeling like you're just going to totally fall off the edge of the earth. I think you need kind of like a safe space within which to make mistakes and discover new things.
Exactly. It is a really odd balance. And I think for me, having those anchor points of the now, the near, and the far keeps me, coming back to that central spot. Okay, this is my far off. This is what I know I've got to get done in the near time. So that's going to help me today, right now, when I'm feeling lost or frustrated or like a wind in the willows kind of a thing. And it's really funny. I was talking to a friend the other day who's a great painter, really great, and I think he was really feeling like his work wasn't moving in the direction. He just wasn't kind of turned on by it anymore, and he was really wanting to feel excited about it again. And I said, well, what sounds like fun to you? What sounds like fun? Do you want to try working with wood? Or do you want to try, and I said to him, I said, when was the last time you entertained using a new material in your work? And he didn't know. He couldn't remember the last time he had experimented in that way. And I was like, maybe that's something you should give a try, and where you want to go in the far off, but kind of keeping that spark and entertaining the possibility that your work could go in some different directions rather than the way that everybody knows you as this established painter who makes paintings that look like this, and that's what everyone expects from you. Maybe start playing a little bit and dreaming a little bit. Well, maybe I could be the kind of artist who does some stuff like this. Or maybe I could be the type of person who has a life that looks like this. So I don't know. Sometimes that stuff can really unstick you and keep you just moving forward and really make some breaks for you in the future.
Mhm.
But it's funny that you were talking to your friend about his business plan, small business plan.
I didn't think that we'd be able to find any common ground, but but we managed to.
Yeah, definitely.
May I interject the thought that people in the fine art arena, which is only one segment of the world of art, have perhaps a less formulated approach to their career path, but an outline or a business plan done in very preliminary format that could lead to a much more structured plan can lead to their evolution of their creativity, particularly like a Rauschenberg who had some vast financial backers that permitted his creativity to really go in the direction that he found over the years of his growth and development. Recently, we've been working for 3 years on a project that's involved a lot of creative people, but you have to orchestrate, you have to outline, you have to build a business plan, or if you don't have the foundation, the building blocks never grow to the fruition of success, whatever that endeavor might be. And it seems to me that a lot of this conversation is very liberal in its fine arts approach, but taking a different approach to this can be useful to the successful career development beyond the arts and crafts approach, if I can use that term loose, because the arts and crafts, of course, is a period in time that's beautiful architecture, beautiful stained glass, and beautiful detailing. But a lot of these great people have had someone, if not themselves, working with them in unison to create a direction, a business plan, that which is an encouragement to see the evolution and the success of that which does find itself in the Whitney, the Museum of Modern Arts, etc.
Yes, and I think these same thoughts about entertaining possibility could be applicable to really anyone. I like to talk to people about entertaining possibility in their creative ideas, like maybe a woman who's a full-time accountant and finds a lot of fulfillment in her career, but has had ideas or dreams about maybe taking dance classes, but has felt that that was out of the realm of her possibility. To her, I would say, go to dance classes. Like, entertain the fact that this could be an amazing thing for you. Go to a class. Commit to going for a few months and see what happens. See how you feel. And I think that could go, that could be only your hobby, and it would be fulfilling and worthy and important enough if it brings your life joy. And, happiness is contagious. If you are happy and you are self-fulfilled and it is the result of you having dreams and going after them, those things are contagious and they catch on to other people, and other people are affected in a positive manner by that. So to me, it's just that water effect. And it's also applicable to someone who is potentially, desiring to have a professional career in the arts or as a small business owner, to flesh that out, to say, not only can I have a small business, but I will entertain the possibility that it could be incredibly successful. And I am going to reach out and tap into those resources that are available to me to make this business the most successful thing I can make it. And I believe that's an incredibly creative function of the human capability. It's a little combination, I believe, of brain, blood, sweat, and tears, and willpower. You really do have to flesh it out. And it could, even be for someone who has a traditional job and they also want a side career. I think that all of those options are completely available. And I do believe that positive, forward thinking with the right attitude and the right reaching out to resources around you can result in that for really anyone. Another funny thing about creativity and the word possibility is that oftentimes people who are utilizing creative thought are seeing possibilities with an alignment of things, kind of a pattern of things. They'll see a new way of working an old system that could be very beneficial to their current business, so that maybe they don't think of a new product or even a new system, but a new way of organizing. And that is also creative thought. Looking at the old system, seeing the issues with it, and seeing new possibilities within it, and reorganizing it for more efficient functioning. That's another place where entertaining possibility and utilizing your creativity is an excellent option. I will just give an update about my friend Amanda, who ran the half marathon that I always talk about. She just started culinary school in the last two weeks because for her, many years ago, she started thinking about how she wanted to learn to cook. She planted some gardens and she started reading cookbooks, and now, about 5 years later, she's taken that to the extent of being in culinary school. And that's kind of cool. Seeing someone that you've known for a long time, we've been friends over 10 years, and watching the progression in her life of things that once were not on her radar or in the realm of her possibility that have become so is really cool to see that development for your friends.
How do you motivate young children as they're growing up to become creative?
That is a really interesting question to me, mostly because I feel like most people tell their kids, you can do anything, you can be whatever you want to be. What do you want to be when you grow up? I feel like possibilities when you're little are sort of endless. Some kids are like, they know exactly what they want to be. They think to themselves, you ask a little kid, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And some of them will say something from, anything from a fireman to a unicorn, something that is possible versus, well, you're not going to turn into a unicorn. That's not possible. But that kid is really confident, and that kid's like, no, that's what I'm going to be, I think that something happens along the way because some kids lose that, and you find a lot of kids that are really confused and in college, not knowing what they want to be, not really, leaving college and being a little lost. Some kids that don't go to school because they think, I don't know what I want to be. I don't think school's for me, but I'm not quite sure. Some kids that don't go to school that are incredibly confident that they know what they're going to be. I don't know. I think that's a question that involves a lot of factors. And those factors are that child's individual experiences in their family, in their school, in their life, how those things are nurtured and cared for along the way. That's a pretty complex scientific question. So I'm not sure. As a teacher,
can I take a stab at that one?
I would love to hear what you had to say about that, Molly. Yeah.
Because I was really lucky. I am really lucky. My parents have always been very supportive. And for me, I think what they did that was most important for my, not just my creative health, but just my confidence level and my ability to believe in, that it was possible for me to actually manifest the things that I wanted to do. What they did for me basically was just taking me seriously. It's like I would have an idea, and sometimes it would be total, it's like when you're a kid, it's like, I probably took every kind of musical lesson. And, and also, like, I was lucky enough to have parents who could financially support me doing these things. But, even if we had had no money, I know that they would have found some way to at least help me in the right direction. But, they never scoffed at any idea that I had. They sort of, even if, it's like, I want to take voice lessons. No, I hate voice lessons. I want to take bass lessons. No, I can't. My fingers are too fragile. I can't play the bass. So I sort of bounced around a little bit when I was young. But they, and they didn't necessarily indulge. It's not that they indulged everything that I wanted to do, but if I took a serious interest in something, then they would sort of hold me to that. So it's like, okay, you're interested in this. You want lessons. Okay, so we expect you to practice, and we expect you to sort of hold up your end of the bargain. And if you are, if you are really serious about this, then we will support you, in whatever way we can along the way. And a lot of that too meant sort of turning it back on me. So it's like, well, why do you want these things? Is this really the best? You sort of want to go in this direction, but is this really what you want? So they were personally invested in my development every step of the way.
Yeah.
And and they still are. And I think it's made our relationship really strong. And I think it has also caused me to be a much more critical self-evaluator. So I hear their voice in my head. It's like, is this, I sort of want to do this, but is this practical, or is this the best method for this? And so that has been the best foundation for me that they could have given me.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here this evening and talk about nurturing your creativity by entertaining possibility. And I hope, as always, that you are encouraged to continue to move forward in your creative pursuits, whatever they may be. And I do want to let you know again that you are the first people to hear about the 28 Days to Creating Your Creativity Habits class that's going to start on May 1st.
All right.
Yeah. So I'll be sending that out in the newsletter for registration.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thanks, Smalls, for being here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grace, also. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.